Seemingly all the conversations surrounding the Sixers have been about the NBA draft, but the organization continues to do their due diligence behind the scenes and are showing interest in bringing an NBA return to former lottery pick Dennis Smith Jr. What does this mean for the team? Is this a good idea, and could the guy that once looked to be paving a lane as a premier guard defender in the league be a missing ingredient to this team? Doing to discuss it all as the countdown to the draft is on less than 3 weeks ago, about 2.5 at this point. A lot of excitement building. And of course, that is not the only moves that can be done on this roster. So we did get this report from Keith Pompey saying that former NBA lottery pick Dennis Smith Jr. is working out for the Sixers, according to sources. Smith is among several participants at the team's 2-day veteran minicamp. And to put it out there, there is other interest as well, as the Dallas Mavericks have also been connected to Dennis Smith Jr. But this is a really interesting addition that could make sense on the Sixers team. Now, one of the concerns, and to get out in front of this right now, is of course size. The Dennis Smith Jr., not a guy known for his stature there, that he is going to fit right in that same mix with Tyrese Maxey, with Jared McCain, and potentially who this draft pick is. That brings it even more complicated. This once again forces to me for why I stand on the stance of why Ace Bailey should be the guy there, that is a high-level rebounder that frankly is going to be necessary on the Sixers roster. Now, I understand there are VJ Edgecombe fans, there are Concanipple fans in the comments right now, Trey Johnson fans, all have legitimate cases. I hear you guys all, but we have to make the right long-term pick, and I still sit on the Ace Bailey camp. We're going to continue to dive deeper on this, but to keep this about Dennis Smith Jr., I want to talk a little bit about what he brings to the table. Did want to read this portion of the article from our guy Jacob Moreno. Did a really cool stream with him that you guys can check out on the channel, kind of breaking down a lot of the draft stuff and some of the reports that are surfacing. But he writes about Dennis Smith Jr. in particular. Smith last played in the NBA for the Brooklyn Nets during the 2023-24 season, where he appeared in 56 games, averaging 6.6 points per game on 50.8% true shooting, 3.6 assists per game, and 1.2 steals. Nevertheless, Smith's true calling card is his defensive capabilities, especially while defending at the point of attack. His ability to jar the ball loose and aggressively navigate screens generated many easy transition opportunities for Brooklyn. While the Nets' collective defense wasn't strong that season, they gave up 4.5 more points per 100 possessions when Smith was off the floor compared to when he was on it. Additionally, he led Brooklyn in deflections per game, 2.4, and steals per game, 1.2. Nick Nurse loves defensive playmakers who can increase tempo, and Smith encapsulates that. In a vacuum, he's a worse version of Los Angeles Clippers guard Chris Dunn, but a high-level defender nonetheless. And I do think that is a pretty good comparison, and we saw the impact that Chris Dunn made for that Clippers team. Obviously, the Sixers have a lot of bigger picture questions to still discuss. The fate of the season is far more dependent on the health status of Joel Embiid. If Paul George can bounce back, if they nail this third pick and this guy can be an impact player from day one, but you have to round out the roster from top to bottom, and I do like that they continue to think outside the box. Of course, we know the main free agent targets and the guys that will be frequently talked about across all NBA circles, but where a team can really make the difference is when you get these out-of-the-box ideas. Look at Gershon Yabusele last year as a clear example of this. I know Dennis Smith Jr. is not quite cut from that same cloth there, is that he has more NBA experience, and it kind of highlights some of this defensive stuff again. I did want to pull up this tweet from NBA University, this coming from 2 years ago now, and he says, time to have a conversation about Dennis Smith giving stars hell on the perimeter. 99th percentile in steals, 75, 97th percentile in deflections, recovers loose balls 77.8% of the time, 98th percentile in defensive raptor, 95th percentile in DBPM, a killer rim defense. DSJ is different this year. And what I like about his archetype of player, and in particular, is I think for a lot of players, it sometimes takes a wake-up call at the NBA level. And when you think of Dennis Smith Jr. coming out of NC State, a guy that I really liked coming out of the draft, was a lottery pick, that really the appeal of his game was built on athleticism. He was going to dunk on you, he was going to get out in transition, he was going to outrun you. He got to the NBA, and that did not all translate. When you're playing against the best athletes in the world, that those tools you just cannot lean on at the same rate. Took a little bit of time, but he has reinvented himself and found a lane. Chris Dunn is honestly very similar in this pathway that they've taken, as Dunn, who I believe is the 4th overall pick, even a little bit more pedigree there, kind of realized I can't just be myself and that guy to that extent in the way that it worked the rest of my life. I got to find a clear lane to impact things, and both he and Dennis Smith Jr. have embraced defense as that outlook there. For Dennis Smith Jr. in particular, I do think that the Sixers need to find players that can embrace Nick Nurse's system at a higher level. They have not done the best job of that through his tenure, and when you think of the primetime Nick Nurse teams, think about Toronto, where they have these big, switchable guys that are causing deflections all over the place. That is what Dennis Smith Jr. does. And when you are thinking about balancing this backcourt, when you have a guy like Jared McCain, who as high as I am on him as an offensive talent, and a guy that I really believe could grow into a foundational piece of the Sixers franchise moving forward, there are going to be lineups in which he just straight up can't hang defensively. And he is going to get better. He's only 21 years old. He's a guy who's still in the very early parts of his development here. But if you are trying to balance this win-now approach, then this is an interesting complement that you could add. I am higher on the Tyrese Maxey defensive outlook. I think he deserves more credit than he's gotten for taking those strides forward on that end of the floor last year. Quentin Grimes is a player who has shown some legitimate abilities on the defensive end as well, and that's kind of an interesting mix. But if that is your four-guard trio that you're really leaning on, those four, and that meaning Maxey, McCain, Grimes, and Dennis Smith Jr., I'm pretty satisfied with that. Now, the other part of being really careful about this is you've limited roster spots. And to take a look at what the Sixers' outlook is currently at on the roster, they're a little bit more full than I think a lot of people realize. That currently there are 13 players under contract here. That, of course, is Joel Embiid. That is Paul George. That is Maxey. And some of these are a bit complicated. There are the player options with Kyle Lowry Jr. and Andre Drummond and Eric Gordon, of course, there. All indications are these are three guys that are expected to be back. Now, Oubre is going to be an interesting one, as he probably will gauge his market, and I think in an ideal world would like an extension there. Andre Drummond, there is no world in which he's making more than $5 million on the open market right now, so I do expect him to just opt into that. And Eric Gordon, there's kind of an interesting little financial trick that I do think the Sixers will explore and execute with them, meaning he declines the player option and the Sixers give him a veteran's minimum there. There's going to have to be some pretty fluid conversations, but the benefit of that would be that he makes a little bit more money because the salary cap increased and the veteran's minimum value increases, and the Sixers would save a little bit from a salary cap perspective. So just keep an eye on that. Of course, Jared McCain already under contract and several more seasons still to go. Lonnie Walker, a club option. I do think he will be back, but it would not shock me if this is restructured in a way. Jared Butler, not as bullish in either direction on. Could see it going either way. I like Butler. I would prefer him to be back, but it's certainly not a can't miss. I do think Dennis Smith Jr. would bring more for what he could bring to the Sixers team in comparison to Butler, and if that is the swap that they're interested in making, I'm totally cool with it. Ricky Council IV, a non-guaranteed deal, and this is a guy that I think the writing has been on the wall for. We saw games even in like the prime time of the Sixers really struggle days in last season where he wasn't getting real minutes or wasn't getting clean opportunities, and I think that's a bit telling of the way the organization has swung on him. He's just not good enough as a shooter. He has not taken strides in the right direction, and the most frustrating part to me is a season like last year where there was just madness, where it was a free-for-all. That's where RC4 should have shined, and he honestly took a step back. So I'm pretty over the Ricky Council IV experience. I like him. I've interviewed him a couple times. He's been very cool with me. We'll be rooting for him moving forward, but I don't think it is going to happen in Philadelphia. Justin Edwards absolutely going to be back in a Sixers uniform, and it would not shock me if they try and work out more of a long-term deal. Him making less than $2 million next year is going to end up being one of the better bargain contracts in the NBA. And then below that, Adem Bona, of course, under contract and will stick around, and Alex Reese on a two-way deal, a unique two-year two-way deal, which is not seen very often. Saw it pop up a couple times last year, but a little different. I bring all this up to say that you do have to be calculated and careful with this. There still are greater needs than what just Dennis Smith Jr. provides, so there is going to have to be a balance here. If Ace Bailey is the pick, that you feel confident in what he can bring from a forward perspective, a guy that is a high-level rebounder, 7.5 per game at the collegiate level, and frankly, think that's going to translate right away. There's a hunger the way he attacks the glass that I don't think he gets enough credit for. I do think that translates. I still would like another true four, Gershon Yabusele, in an ideal world, but we'll see how the financials do ultimately work out there. It's not the clearest pathway to retaining him, but we will see what the offers come in at. There's very much a world where a team can outbid the Sixers on Yabusele, but I do think that if all things are equal, he would like to be reunited, and I do wonder if there could be a chance to put him on this Kelly Oubre Jr. type trajectory where you have this chance to get this next big contract by taking a little bit cheaper in the short term. We'll see. That is kind of an optimistic view, and in reality, once again, they very easily can be priced out if the right team comes knocking, but that has to happen for that to be the case. But for now, I do sit pretty positive on the Dennis Smith Jr. conversation. That is a guy that I think would be a nice addition to the Sixers team and give a little more options from a defensive standpoint there. But do want to hear from you guys as well. Is that a signing that you would be interested in? Do you think that that roster spot could be better used for a bigger player, more of a forward, more of a wing, more of a big man, something like that? Let me know what you guys think in the comments as well, but I do vote yes on the Dennis Smith Jr. conversation. Drop those thoughts below. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button if you have not already. Dropping a like on this video. I'll be right back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.